Okay, so this is my Hildryn build, and my Hildryn is able to heal the party's shields, uh, health, and energy, while also making them invisible and reducing their damage by an amount. So I'm going to explain to you how I'm able to do that. Here's a good little demonstration. Let's start off by simply turning on my Aegis Storm. Now, a lot of you Hildryn players already know that turning these two abilities on is usually quite the drain on your shield power. But you'll notice that my shields will stay on indefinitely, forever. It takes quite a few targets for my sustain to be exceeded, and by that I mean targets that are in the radius of my Aegis Storm. So how am I able to do that? Well, I'm going to explain that here. Let's first generate some targets. Let's go with the corrupted heavy colors. Alright, so first thing, the most important thing, is the power of a Roxa Kubero. No other frame can take advantage of a Roxa Kubero. I guess maybe Harrow, maybe? Like Hildryn can. And the reason is because a Roxa Kubero periodically, actually I would say frequently, replaces the energy that is expended on Hildryn. And because her shield power is her energy, the Roxa Kubero is effectively doing two things at once, healing her ability to resist damage and her power. And he does it at a rate consistent enough that he can basically keep her floating with Aegis and Haven on at all times. And like I said, it takes a lot of targets, like 20 or more, to start burning through my shields. So it's pretty standard. I like the mecha set. I have the full set, and I'll explain to you why I do that. Pretty standard companion lifesteal. Here it, generates health orbs. That's helpful for the team in general, and that's mostly what this build is. It's just a one big MOA team support. Put your stake in the ground and claim it, and hold it. It's great for defense type missions where you have a point. Mobile defense, because Hildryn's very mobile, and those kinds of missions where you have to defend a point or a target. So Howl here, okay, so you notice Howl here has a 24-meter radius, and basically that's just a backup for if targets get past my Aegis for whatever reason. Sometimes your shield does go down. Sometimes they hit you pretty hard, and if you go down and you have to use your shield pillage to try to replace your energy, this will buy you a few seconds, throwing and making enemies run away from you. Protect. This is the one. This is the mod that allows you to continue flying indefinitely in your Hildryn. This is the Protect mod. It says Kubero comes to the defense of its master, replenishing their shields by 300 points. Now, what it doesn't tell you is how frequently it does it. So, you saw me flying around earlier. Now take close attention to my shields. 330. Yep, and then back up. Most it'll get down is maybe 200 points, and then I'll go right back up again. You'll see my dog turn this kind of blue color when he does it. See that? That's him healing my shields. Now, you are going to take damage at times. It's just going to happen. And so, I have Arcane Aegis. Aegis basically regenerates your shield over time, for those of you who don't know. I'll go in here and this explains it. It has a fully ranked one, has a 6% chance every time you're damaged to regenerate your shields by 60 shields per second for 20 seconds. That basically helps you when you're getting burned. Now, a lot of other people will put in Arcane Barrier here, but the goal of this particular build is to support your team. And so I have in here Arcane Energize, and we'll get back to that here in a second. So I mentioned Mecha, the Mecha set, and I have all 4 pieces here. Now this one is good because it gives you 150% extra damage against a marked target. And if you see the set bonus down here, it says a companion marks a target every 15 seconds for 12 seconds, and that killing that target applies all their status effects to all the enemies around them for 30 minutes, or within 30 meters, excuse me. So basically, it helps you kill the target that's marked. That's the main reason for having this one. It actually helps your whole team because it is an aura mod. And where that comes in handy is here. Killing a marked enemy grants 60% of your armor for 20 seconds for each enemy within 30 meters. So Hildryn basically holds up all of these people using her Haven, no, sorry, I have short-term memory issues, guys. Her Aegis storm. And so there could be quite a few enemies caught up in the circle of her Aegis storm. And so if you kill the target that your Kubro periodically marks, you get this huge boost of armor. If you look here, the base armor for Hildryn is 300 points, which is really good. If you look at some frames have like 50 armor, and she has 300. 20% of 300 is 200 armor per target in 30-meter range. So if you kill that target, and you've got 10 other targets caught up in her Aegis storm, you just got 2,000 armor. Bam! Instantly. Which really helps you survive. And along that note, I have Agility Drift in here, or Agility Drift and Aviator. Now, Aviator reduces the damage while you're airborne by 40%. Some people use this on Titania with her Razor Wing, and we're going to use that for Hildryn when she's in her Aegis Storm. Agility Drift does the same thing by an additional 12%. So between these two mods, you reduce the damage that you take by 52%. Plus, Agility Drift here gives you 6% evasion to avoid the projectiles altogether. The combination of these two is incredibly good for Hildryn and Titania, because they're airborne all the time. Zephyr, less so in my experience, but still good. And then finally, adaptation. If you've been living under a rock and for some reason don't know how important this mod is, it should be almost on every single one of your builds. I have it on all my builds, and most of them are stealth-oriented builds. So that should tell you something about how important it is. Obviously, redirection, if you have primed, I'm sure there's a primed one out there. Good for you, use it. More shields is better. There is a build out there, that's supposedly immortal, where you intentionally reduce the shields on Hildryn to regenerate them faster than your passive abilities resets. Hildryn's passive, just so you know, is a 3% immunity whenever her shields drop. And the cool thing about Haven is that friends who are linked to Hildryn by her Haven ability, if their shields drop, they actually get the same passive benefit that Hildryn does. So they gain a 3-second immunity, just like Hildryn does. Pretty dang cool. And on that note, because this is a support build, I do have high duration on this build. Well, fairly high duration. I try to get my shield recharge over 100, and you'll see there that I have it at 124. And unless they're chroma, everybody's going to love that. Everybody. So Haven is a big part of this build. It damages enemies. It damages enemies around your friends, and it heals your friends' shields. So, really awesome ability. It's a good one to have. What's really fun is when your dog heals your shields beyond their maximum, and everybody gets an overshield who's linked to you. On that note, it is also a good idea to have a fair amount of range. I do not have maxed range on here because I don't like overextended. I don't like losing my strength, and I don't have room. So I basically I use stretch and reach, auger reach, to get myself to the 175 rate. And actually that's the sweet spot, because if you remember, my Kubro's Howl ability has a radius of about 24 meters. This range gives my Haven a range of about 26, and my Aegis Storm also about 26 meters. So if they're able to get past my Haven for whatever reason, maybe it's a arbitration drone that allows them to get past my wall, they can, my dog can still attempt to send them running. So it's just a nice little backup. Anything more than this, there are other reasons we'll get into in a minute why you don't want to have much more than 25 meters radius. So I found that 175 is the perfect range, and efficiency always helps, especially if you're going to be taking a lot of hits. You're not going to if you do it the way I do this build. So on that note, Arcane Energize. One thing about Arcane Energize, let's go a little demonstration here. What I found out, so we'll go over to these turtles over here, lift them up, and you'll notice when Hildryn in her Aegis Storm generates all these orbs, and the little effect you see going out from her is an chance from the arcane to heal the energy of everybody around me within 20 meters, I think it is. It doesn't happen all the time, but she's constantly generating these orbs and healing the party while she does it, their energy anyway. The thing that I want to point out is, so let's say they're right at the edge of my wall here. Now I can't pick them up here, right? My operator can. What I found out is that if I pick them up with the operator, it does not heal the energy of my party. I had a friend and we tested it out, and they didn't get any energy from me doing this. Now there's a good reason to do this with your operator, which I'll be getting to in a second. So it's a really nice thing that you can pick up a whole group of heavy-duty bad guys like this, and they are completely helpless. And the whole time, you can see how often I'm generating energy here. That's 750 energy in like less than 5 seconds. Now, Hildryn can't benefit from this, but her team sure as heck can. Okay? So you're CCing the enemies that come into range, holding them up for your party to do damage to them, and you're giving them the energy to do said damage. That's the main point. Sure, you know, you can contribute by nuking. You do it all day long. You do have to watch, especially if you have, like, you know, speed buffs on your balefire, that you don't use too much of your shield power. But as you can see, that would be devastatingly effective if you want to burn some targets. So that's the first thing. The next thing you'll notice on my build here on the Warframe. Okay, covered that. And obviously, okay, so that actually does the Warframe. You'll notice my weapons here. So my weapons are all from the parent sequence. All three of these weapons you can get from the parent sequence. Or, I take that back. The primary and secondary weapons you can get from the parent sequence. The third weapon you get from New Loka. And now New Loka, their weapon here has this really cool ability to reduce any damage over time effects. So if you get a bleed, or people know that slash procs and toxic procs are really nasty to Hildryn. Well, this reduces the damage of those procs by 75%, just for having it equipped. That's all you got to do. You don't have to use it ever. It is basically a stat stick with a big perk. So when it doesn't happen very often if you're flying, but occasionally a toxic ancient will still one-shot you. But the other kinds of procs that the infested do, for example, throwing out gas clouds, you usually are floating over them. But on the occasion that they do somehow get you, you'll still have the full duration of the damage over time effect, but its damage will be reduced by 75%. And the reason you want that and prefer that is so you could get a mod like rapid resilience, I think it is, where it reduces the time of the damage proc. But you don't want that, because you want to take advantage of those procs to make them trigger your arcane Aegis and start generating more shields if you're taking damage like that. So basically, and it also frees up a mod slot, right? It effectively does the same thing as rapid resilience, only I haven't used a mod slot for rapid resilience. I have instead a weapon, a melee weapon, and if I'm flying around, I can't swing a melee weapon anyway, right? So this gives me an advantage that way. I can put other mods on here too, like I think one of my mod setups I have, Modus Impact, right? It's mostly just a stat stick for Hildryn. I can put anything I want in here. It's a great weapon for a lot of other builds. Just for your information, I use it on almost all my builds because it's that effective at helping me survive. So now, the reason I have the parent sequence guns on the primary and secondary slots are for the, what do they call it? The Secura, what is it? It is, let's go to my Spectre Vandal. It explains. Spectre sequence. It's the sequence effect. Now, what will happen is after a certain amount of affinity is gained, there'll be an explosion from your radius, from you, and it'll damage everybody. And I think with sequence, the damage type is radiation, and so it radiates everybody around you for like 1,000 damage, and at the same time heals your health. For Hildryn, that's a big deal. And what you'll see me doing is I generally, your default is your primary weapon, right? You could go to your secondary weapon, because what will happen, you go into Aegis Storm, it's really weird. Sometimes you'll see your primary weapon there in her one hand. I think it's a little awkward. And now you'll see down at the bottom right there that the Spectre Vandal is now selected. It's good to have that happen. If you have Balefire on, you can't take advantage of the sequence effect. It has to build up with it on your person. So you unequipped Balefire if you're going to hop out of your operator, which we'll be doing a lot later on. I'll explain why. And the reason is that as your Warframe is doing damage and killing things, it gets experience, right? And eventually it'll build up enough experience to set off your sequence, and again, help you replace shields while adding damage to the party, and you're not even in it. You're not even in it, right? Now, you may have noticed that when my operator hides, my Warframe hides too. That is an Unairu ability. So that gets into the next part of this build. So I've shown you now, with Haven, you can heal your party's shields. Everybody knows that about Hildryn. With Arcane Energize, you can heal your party's energy, right? With your operator and the Unairu tree, go in here, right? You can cause your party to go into the shadows. Now I'm working on Void Chrysalis and other things. I don't have, as you can see, I don't have a whole lot unlocked in my that's the next big progression for my characters is to unlock all the focus trees and their waybounds. I have these two unbound, but to help my Naira tree. So you want to have on your operator, ideally, and I'll explain where I'm going with this. Ideally, from Zenrik, you want this one here, unbound. This one gives your operator energy regeneration. When you run out of void mode and you want to get back into void mode ASAP, and so energy regeneration helps with that. Void flow is obviously the next thing I'm working on, and what that does is increases your operator's energy so you can stay in there longer before you have to regen. Now the reason that's important is my operator has two arcanes, Magus Repair and Magus Glitch. What will happen with Magus Glitch is if my operator dies, if these bad guys shoot my operator, right, I'll die and head back into my frame. Now, with everybody else who doesn't have Magus Glitch, they'll experience a debuff called Transference. And on Hildryn, that's particularly nasty because she'll lose all her shields. All of them. And with her, that is absolutely deadly. That is lethal. So you want to have Glitch, but if your operator gets shot and killed, you'll head back into your frame and you'll be just fine. You can pop back out. It literally works like that all the time. In fact, I can show you how that looks. So, turn all this on. We'll go out there and we'll snag these guys. Right? So I'm going to run out there with my operator and I'm going to get shot intentionally. It's going to take a while to kill me. And I'm still just fine. See that? Now, I really wish I could adjust my operator in this thing like so you can see that the Magus glitch and how that works. The other thing that Magus Repair does, Magus Repair, when I'm in void mode and I'm hidden, I heal the health of everyone in my bubble, in my proximity. So basically, I think it's like 25 meters, all warframes. It doesn't heal other operators, but it does heal the warframes. So what I do with my Hildryn, you remember seeing all those energy orbs, right? This is a big key. Okay, so I got these guys lifted up. My Hildryn can do this all day long. I go into stealth, but my energy starts to run out. Because, one, I don't have a whole lot of energy pool, and I'm just starting out, and my operator's kind of slow too. Because I don't have the Madurai speed abilities either. You know, the sprint speed and the operator movement speed buffs. So, I want to get these orbs to regenerate my stealth and keep stealth perpetually. This Hildryn generates these all the time. All the time. And you'll notice that when I pick them up in my operator form, it replaces my operator energy. Like I said earlier, it does not replace the energy of the party around you, even though you have arcane energize. It sucks, but that's the way it is. If you want to do that, it's no big deal. You just pop into your frame and you pick up all the orbs, and you go back out, and then you start invisible again. Now they can't see. This is an Anairu ability, by the way. They can't see my Hildryn. And in order to maintain that cloak and healing ability, I pick up the orbs that Hildryn, my frame, is generating. I just keep doing it as my energy gets used. And that's what I do. Now I have a meta type amp. It has a Certus bracelet and this, scaffold that everybody uses to burn Eidolons. I have another one that uses the pod. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to just leave here, actually. I'm going to go to my orbiter and equip that. And I'll show you Magus Repair and Magus Glitch, because they're really great arcanes to have. Okay, so here we are. See, Xbox is on good behavior today. Let's see, it didn't take long enough.
If I may say, operator, your chosen warframe suits you.
There we go. Okay, so you see Magus Repair. When you're in void mode, you will heal warframes within 20 meters by 20% health per second. That means they will be back up to 5 or 100% health within 5 seconds. Now, the key thing here is the more health they have, the more powerful the heal is. So if you get somebody like Anaros standing next to your operator while you're doing this, and he's got 10,000 health, you're going to be healing him by 2,000 health a second. Think about that. That is very, very powerful. So the next thing, I have Magus Lockdown, and that comes in handy for certain situations. But the other one is Arcane Glitch. This is the other on transference, 100% chance to negate transference static. Guys, you do not want that transference static. It will just ruin your day. In fact, I'm gonna unequip it to show you. Okay. Oh, and I was gonna equip the other amp that I have. Like my name. Meta sucks. Okay, Ricochet. So this is using the pod. You can see here it says Clogger Brace because I like the rapid regeneration and fire rate. I can constantly shoot stuff. There is something to be said though about staying in cloak longer and hitting harder, coming out of cloak less often because I'm hitting harder. Which is the next stamp I'm going to build is I'm going to use the Certus Brace, but the Ron Prism and the Pod Scaffold and give that a shot and see if it's any better. But mostly it's the Pod Scaffold. Guys, in arbitrations, the Pod Scaffold is just murderous to arbitration drones. You know those drones that make everybody around them immune to everything? And you gotta kill the drones somehow before you can kill anything else? This thing is an absolute bane to those drones' existence because you don't even have to aim, just generally in their direction, and the discs will go after everything within range, including those drones, and it'll eventually obliterate those drones. You're not even trying. Quite often, with the range of this thing, they won't even get near you, to be honest. So, in my opinion, for arbitration, nobody should be using anything but the pod if you're going to be in arbitration. It's just that lethal to the arbitration drones. So, it make your life so much easier getting rid of those things. So anyway, let's go, I'll show you what the pod does and why I say that by going back to Samaris here. Alright.
The multitude of creatures you have immortalized would cry out in thanks.
If they could. I don't know if anyone else has caught on to that. It's quite disturbing. I mean, the ego of this computer. I mean, as you walk up to it, and it's like right in your face. Anyway, let's go in here. Okay, so here we are back at the simulacrum. Let's poor corrupted heavy gunners. Gonna be spending an eternity getting shot up in the simulacrum. But the multitudes of beings that I have immortalized in the simulacrum would cry out in thanks if they could for me blowing them up perpetually. Whatever. Okay. Oh, that's right. They have to be active for me to demonstrate why you want glitch. Okay. If you do not have glitch, this is what's going to happen to you when your operator dies. So, we're going to go unpause the AI. Aegis and Haven. Oh, you see how my primary weapon's just hanging out there? That's what I'm talking about. Fortunately, it does the... it still does the effect that I was doing. I'm getting hit, and I start raising people up. Now I'm in a good position. My Hildryn's going to maintain and just sit here all day like she does. Now, I'm going to run out here. Oh no, my dog is down. Your dog goes down, guys. you go down, so you better hurry up and get them. Now, along with the demonstration here, bam, my shields are down, and I'm wrecked. See that? That's what happens if you don't have Magus Glitch. That was actually an excellent demonstration. So, and you'll remember earlier where I had Magus Glitch, and that didn't happen. I just simply went back to my Warframe and could pop right back out. Not a problem. Okay, so Magus Glitch, gotta have it. Gotta have it. The other one is Magus Repair, to help repair your teammates around you. So, now, let's demonstrate pod. So, we're over here, I got my Secura Penta. Oh, there's me healing people's energy. Okay. Got everything running, everything's coasting. I pop out like out of a helicopter. It's so cool. Right? Go into my stealth mode. Now, they can't shoot my Hildryn anymore. They can't see her. As long as I keep picking up these orbs. Okay? So, yeah, I can't heal my team's energy when they're operating. But I can keep my Hildryn alive and make them invisible. And my dog. Remember what I was saying? Your dog goes down, you go down. Well, they can't see my dog, they can't shoot my dog. Right? Now, while I'm in this form, not only is everybody cloaked around me, but I'm healing them at the same time. But occasionally, you're going to want to start trying to burn these people, because you can see I'm not doing a whole lot of damage. All I'm doing is major CC and buffs, right? So, hop out, and I'll shoot this thing. Look at how it hops around. Imagine if one of these guys was an arbitration drone, making all these other guys completely invincible to my other teammates. You don't even have to aim in the general direction, or you just have to aim in the general direction, and you'll see it goes out and it still hits targets. You can bounce off walls. You can see when I'm aiming, right? And if you do it with your cloaking, you'll still confuse the enemy and where your targets are. They'll just about be ready to fire, and then suddenly they'll all be invisible. Your whole team. Meanwhile, your discs are going around slaughtering everything and killing those drones. Mostly it's about those drones. This build, yeah, you can whip out Balefire and you can do some decent damage. There are guys who have major damage ability. Major. And you want them to do the killing at that point. There's a point when your Haven and your Haven only becomes a buff. The damage is so negligible that it only becomes a buff to your teammates' shields. And at that same time, Aegis Storm only becomes a CC. The damage is so negligible that it's not even worth talking about. So there's not really, in my opinion, a point in amping up your power strength. It works great for lower levels, below level 60, but after level 60s, the mobs start getting significantly harder to kill, to a point that you're not going to be able to kill them with Aegis and Haven, or even Balefire at a certain point. But there are team members out there who have spec'd in damage, who can use your significant buffing abilities. Now, one of the things you want to watch out for, actually before I get into that, you can use this build to hunt Eidolons. The pod is actually pretty good at killing Vombalists. Personally, I'm of the opinion that at least one person in the party should have a pod amp to kill the Vomblists. It's just automatic. It's easy. You don't have to aim or try to find out where they're at. The discs do the home. They're like homing missiles. They just go after them. You don't have to worry about it. Everybody else could use the standard meta stuff, but the one person should have the pod. But that aside, one thing about hunting Eidolons with Hildryn is your Haven ability can actually really mess up, especially if you're built like me with high duration. It can really mess up your Chroma's ability to build up his Hex armor, his Scorn, and his other buff. You want him to be able to do that. So what you do is you wait until after someone destroys, what do they call those, Sidanas or whatever it is on the Eidolon, one of the kneecaps or the elbows or the shoulders, and the Eidolon is about to scream. You turn on your Haven then, and if anybody is in your radius gets hit, including the probes, they'll get that 3-second immunity that everybody gets with Hildryn, and it helps them survive. On top of that, you're helping them with their shields, and it doesn't make them immune. I think their energy still suffers. I actually should test that. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that it still suffers. But Hildryn doesn't have to worry about any of the damage. I can laugh at an Eidolon all day long. They can do anything they want. It doesn't matter if it's which Eidolon it is. They can't hurt her. She's completely immune. She doesn't have energy to lose, and her shields are so beastly that it doesn't matter. But just bear in mind that as soon as the Eidolon's done yelling, you have to turn off your Haven, or your Chroma's going to hate you. He's going to have to go way away from you to try and tear down his own shields and do self-damage to himself to buff his Vex armor back up to do the 600, 800, 900% chance or 900% damage that some of them can do. You want them to do that, so you basically turn it on when the Eidolon's about to shout, and turn it off when he's done. And that's how you do that. You can fly around in Aegis the whole time. It kind of helps point out where the Vomblists are actually, because they turn yellow and they become very obvious where they're at. Anyway, that's just a little tip about using Eidolon fights. But anyway, so let's go look at Unairu. The main thing is about Unairu and why I use it. Obviously, an Ira Wisp, especially if you're going to be hunting Eidolons. Somebody's got to be able to buff up the damage of the amps. That's what this thing does. The other thing that is these two, and I know I've already briefly mentioned them, but you'll notice that when I go into shadow mode, you can see here, because it's fully maxed out, that any friendlies within 25 meters also go invisible. And it costs me a fair amount of energy, but I don't have to worry about that because I have all of those orbs being generated by Hildryn's Aegis ability, correct? So I could stay perpetually invisible, healing the party's warframes and their shields through my Hildryn. And when I level this up, I'll also be able to reduce any damage they get from explosions, gas procs, all those kinds of things. So that's pretty much my Super Moa build. That's what I call my Super Moa build. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And next time I'll be talking about my Super Saren, my first strike build. And I'm sure you guys will find that very, very interesting. And I hope you found it informative.